We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. MashaAllah, not long to go now. We're on day 26, and inshallah, Eid will be just before the weekend, inshallah. This is a live show. We do take in all your questions. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please send it via the WhatsApp, the email address. Give us a call here live in the studio, +44 203 515 0199. Or if you're watching via the Facebook or YouTube, I apologize. If you're watching via Facebook or YouTube, just put your question in the comment section and inshallah the staff will be able to forward me all of your questions for myself and the Sheikh to discuss and answer. I'm your host Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Maash. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you today? How's your fast coming along?
Alhamdulillah, all fine. Taqabbal a'malakum.
Minkum, inshallah. Sheikhna, let's begin with a common, is it an illness or a condition, but it happens to a lot of our brothers and sisters, and that is nosebleeds. If one fasting suddenly develops a nosebleed, what is the ruling if blood goes inside his or her throat?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. Well, if the blood reaches the area of the mouth, then one should throw out this blood. Initially it's najis, you cannot swallow najis, number one, and number two, you're fasting. So the one, as soon as he feels that there is a blood in his mouth, should throw out. Because what breaks the fast is anything which goes through inside the throat. Be it edible, something you can eat, or non-edible. It could be a soil, it could be anything that is not suitable for eating or drinking. Whatever goes inside would break the fast. Someone must be careful.
Inshallah. Sheikhna, what are the mustahab days to fast? Apart from, Ramadan is wajib, but mustahab days to fast?
Mustahab days, basically, we just had the month of Rajab and Sha'ban. It's mustahab to fast those 2 months, if the one can do so. If not, the one can fast only, let's say, 27th of Rajab, the mab'ath of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa in terms of Sha'ban, the very 3 days before the month of Ramadan, mustahab, and connect those 3 days of Sha'ban with the month of Ramadan, mustahab as well. Also you have Eid al-Ghadir, 18th of the Hijjah, again mustahab for the one to fast this holy and great day, and Eidullah al-Akbar, of course. And you have as well the 1st of the Hijjah till 9th of the Hijjah, the Arafah day, in other words, to fast those 9 days in the Hijjah. And of course, you're not allowed to fast the 10th day, which is Eid al-Adha. You can't fast. We mentioned this before that you cannot fast on the 2 Eids, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr. So yes, you can fast as mustahab from the 1st of the Hijjah till 9th of the Hijjah.
Inshallah. Shaykhna, a question from on the WhatsApp. That is, Assalamu alaikum. I am 16 years old who wants to begin or open a campaign in the field of freelancing. My main focus is to be able to make artwork and for adverts and animate for corporations and businesses. I have collected main focus. I have contacted you in order to know of the ahkam of stepping into such a field and what I should be aware of before taking this initiative into full throttle. I'm aware of a honeycomb style of advertising and I will not accept any such requests. Your response is greatly appreciated.
Inshallah. Basically, to work in any field, be it medical field, be it marketing field, be it business field, educational field, you have to make sure that when it comes to the forbidden acts and haram boundaries, you have to respect it and not to cross it. So we had a question about a lady who works in a hospital and she has to wear short sleeves and to show her arm.
Yeah.
We said it's haram, unless she covers it with something temporary, disposable sleeves. Likewise, in business, you're not allowed to sell alcohol or pork meat.
Yes.
Likewise, for the marketing, you're not allowed to participate in promoting those haram items, alcohol. Let's
Gambling.
say, let's say you, for example, take pictures of and photographs of the alcohol bottles and so forth,
Yes.
and you promote them and so forth. Any kind of haram is not allowed. Shaking hand with the opposite gender, sometimes you have to meet companies. You have to shake hand with the opposite gender, who is a CEO, for example, for a company, and so forth. You have to make sure that you don't cross those haram boundaries. So know the haram, and then start your business or proceed with your plans. Because without knowing the haram, you might fall into the haram without knowing or being aware of it. So important for the one to know what's haram, what's allowed, what's wajib, and then they can proceed with their work, inshallah.
Inshallah. Another one from the viewers, and that is okay, we had an individual here. I haven't fasted for the last 4 days as I had consumed alcohol. It was very stupid of me, and I didn't fast in order to remove the impurities from myself. I know I have made a mistake. What am I to do about the fast that I have not completed?
Well, initially the one should ask Allah's forgiveness. And just before the end of this holy month, make sure that you go and do the ghusl of tawbah and ask Allah Azza wa Jal for His forgiveness. 2 rak'ah salah with dua, asking Allah with sincere, I think, heart we mentioned in the beginning of the month about the prophetic sermon. Sincerely that I will not do this again, and to repent to Allah Azza wa Jal. I will not repeat this sin again. Inside this holy month and even outside. To quit alcohol forever. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will inshallah grant you the forgiveness and the mercy, inshallah. Because we're not allowed to despondent or despair from Allah's mercy and forgiveness. From rahmatullah azza wa jal. And secondly, the one should basically make up those days in which he broke the fast after the holy month of Ramadan, qada, as well as kafara for it. Okay. If it was done in the daytime, in the time of fasting. Because if you break your fast with halal, like food and drink, there's a kafara, one kafara.
Yeah.
You choose one of the kafarat. But breaking with the haram,
yes,
you have to do all the kafarat.
Oh wow, all three.
Fasting 2 consecutive months.
Yes.
And feeding 60 paupers, miskin.
Yes.
So yes, I mean there's a hefty penalty for that.
MashaAllah.
But the one should basically think twice before acting and committing any sin in future.
I see.
That there's a dunya punishment and akhirah punishment as well. So I should be careful. But as I've said, the doors of tawbah are open. And just before the end of this month, make sure that you make a sincere tawbah, inshallah, towards Allah.
Another question from one of the viewers is, can the Sheikh shed some light on, say, Sadiq's fatwa on opening the fast early?
I think we spoke about this mas'ala a few days ago. Basically, it's not only Sadiq's fatwa. There are a couple of maraja as well. In Najaf and Qum have issued such statement that if a country like Northern Europe, for example, where you have the hours of fasting exceeds the normal hours which were in the Middle East in the times of the Imam alayhi salam, where they lived, let's say, in Iran, Iraq, in Arabia. It exceeds that normal hours of fasting. It becomes abnormal. You know, to fast 21 hours is abnormal, for example, compared to the normal hours. So His Eminence and other Maraja as well, they came up with the opinion and the fatwa that if it exceeds 17 and a half hours of fasting in that particular region, then they are allowed to break their fast according to the hours of a chosen Islamic city. Let's say Karbala, Qom, Medina, Mecca, Sana'a in Yemen, for example, Damascus, and so forth. You choose a city and calculate how many hours that city or that country they fast, the duration of the fast. You apply it towards the region that you live in, which exceeds 17 and a half hours of fasting, and you break your fast according to those hours back in Middle East. And inshallah, may Allah accept the fast.
Inshallah. Just a quick reminder to the viewers that today is actually 17 hours and 32 minutes fast, so some Muqallideen of Sayyid Sadiq may have the option of opening. Shaykhna, in the month of Ramadan, are we allowed to serve food in restaurants or at home to those whom can't fast due to exemption? From His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, he has a fatwa. What does he say?
The Sayyid mentions that, yes, it is permissible for those who are exempted. Let's say you have an elderly who can't fast, or a pregnant woman, you would serve the food, the breakfast, the lunch for them. They can't fast. But he says that not for others. Let's say you have siblings, God forbid, parents, God forbid, then religious. They don't fast, they don't pray. You can't serve them food in the month of Ramadan in the daytime, because the wajib for them is to fast. So don't encourage them to keep breaking their fast unless they are exempted due to illness or travel and so forth.
Okay. Shaykhna, the one who has obligatory qadha of the month of Ramadan, is he allowed to perform mustahab?
No, he's not allowed. He needs to first to make up those qadha fasts first, and then move towards the mustahab fast.
If there was on the body or garment of a musalli a blood stain, even the size of a needle point of the blood or haid or menstruation, would the salah be valid?
Yes, the salah would be valid as a precaution, as ihtiyab, wujubi, the one should avoid repeat the salah basically.
Okay. Shaykhna, is it permissible to celebrate the death anniversary of the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Basically, celebrating the death of the enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal should be done with the boundary of Islamic teachings and morals. So the one should not exceed those boundaries, let's say by dancing, playing music, and so forth. So it has to be in that boundary. That should be fine. Of course, it is something encouraged even.
Okay.
Basically.
So the same way we celebrate the birthdays of religious figures, you could celebrate in the same way? Exactly,
because we have wilayah and bara'ah.
Yeah.
So in the birthdays, you're showing their wilayah.
Yes.
And in celebrating the death of their enemies, you're showing the bara'ah. So it's part of the celebrations, the religious celebrations, yes.
Excellent. Shaykhna, if one rents a house or a shop or a room and the owner makes it conditional that the tenant uses the property for his own benefit and not for others, would it be permissible for the tenant to rent it out to others? Subletting.
The tenant needs the permission of the landlord to be able to sublet part of the property or even the whole property when he's away on holiday, for example. Without the permission from the landlord, you cannot sublet or let the entire property to anyone else. You have to have the permission, and it's in the contract. When you sign the contract of tenancy contract, it says there you cannot sublet or let the property. So you have to make sure that you basically fulfill the criteria and the clauses in that contract as well.
I see. Shaykhna, is it permissible to buy an apartment which has not been built yet, but is on the drawing board, and the buyer will receive it 5 years later, say when the block is finished? So I guess this is like initial investments when you have these projects. Sometimes these companies, they need initial funding, which they get from people purchasing. They look at the plans, they look at the models, and they say, yeah, and the prices are a bit cheaper then. They start investing, the builders, the company, development company uses that money, to start building and so forth. And then once people see, the foundations put in and the building being constructed, then obviously they purchase more. So beforehand, before the plans have been laid out, the foundations have been put down, can one buy?
Yes, it is permissible. It's allowed, yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Shaykhna, can we rely on the statement of Muslim governments in terms of declaring the first day of Ramadan or Eid day without going back to ulama, since we live in regions where no scholars are available to sight the moon?
If the sighting of the moon is with accordance of the Sharia rules, as mentioned in the Risala of the Fuqaha, then there's no issue with it. Be it by alim who, declares the day of Eid or the day of the first day of fasting, or the government, if they're in line with the ulama. So they actually in line with the ulama's opinion or citing and so forth. But if it's a political aspect behind declaring or announcing Eid day or the first day of fasting, then of course you're not allowed, because it's almost a political means of declaring your own Eid. I am the government, I am the leader of this government, Muslim government, and I announce the Eid is tomorrow, when there's no sighting or there's no accurate sighting. And we've seen this in Arabia. Many times they came up and they apologized.
They've got it wrong.
They did it wrong because they want to do it in their own way. That we announced the Eid. We are the Muslim governments and we are the leaders, so we have to say whenever the Eid. That's the problem. It became more political aspect. So no, we have to go back to those who we trust. Either you trust two mu'min witnesses who have seen the crescent, for example, of the Eid or the first month, or you go back to a group of trustees who you would rely on them, or the office of the Muraja and Ulama, in which they announce every year that this is the first day of Eid or the fasting.
Shah, speaking of governments, a question is coming from one of our viewers. During the occultation of the Imam al-Hujjah, Sharif, Allah protect him and hasten his reappearance, who is authorized to prescribe hudud, the punishment according to Islamic law, and on what basis?
You see, currently many of our ulama, they wrote even in their books and statements that many of those hududs and punishments could not and cannot be implemented now. There isn't a just Islamic state and government today where we can rely and we say that, okay, they can actually perform this had, because there are at least, for example, as an example, there's at least 30 to 40 conditions for cutting one hand if they steal. And you cannot fulfill it, you cannot basically implement it. The conditions are not met with today's situation and economics. So it has to be, the Islamic government and a just Islamic government. The conditions are met, and then you go back to the ulama to see what they say. So, it's difficult nowadays to just, catch somebody who has committed a crime, theft, for example, and cut his hand or chop his head, for example, as a capital punishment, for example. The hudud now, in the view of many ulama, that cannot be implemented now with the situation, because the conditions are not met. There's poverty, there are crimes, there's a oppression from the Muslim governments, oppressing people. Prisons are filled with political prisoners, for example, and so forth. So there's a chaos in the Muslim region. How can you implement Allah's rules, especially what to do with the ahkam, which you need basically conditions before applying these ahkam. So it's not something easy to be implemented and done, unless going back to the correct Sharia rules and the hukum, and it's lots of things to be done before implementing these ahkam.
Sheikh, another question I think this one's from the YouTube. How can we decide who we should select for taqleed? Do we have to inform them that we are under their taqleed?
You just have to find the one who is a'lam, most knowledgeable, by asking the experts. Because that's one of the criteria of taqleed, to follow the a'lam, the one who is most knowledgeable. And you can ask experts in the hawza, ulama, they tell you that this individual is the a'lam, is the one who has most knowledge. And you just ask for the Risala Amaliya, the book of the rules and the practices, and you follow them. That's it. Not necessarily to tell the office that I am your muqallid.
Yes.
That's my name. Please,
Give me my membership number.
exactly, in the database and so forth.
Ahsan. Shaykhna, there are plenty of mustahab prayers that we recite, nafila as well, after certain prayers, and especially Salat al-Layl, Salat al-Shab. Do these need adhan and iqama, especially Salat al-Shab? Does it need an adhan and iqama? His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, he has an opinion. What does he say?
The Sayyid mentions that the adhan and the iqama are only allowed to be recited for the daily prayers
Wajib
only.
prayers, okay.
The 5 daily prayers. You cannot recite them outside these wajib daily prayers because they are not legislated to be recited neither in nafila nor in other wajib prayers like Salatul Ayat. In Salatul Ayat you say as-salah, 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 for example.
Yeah.
You don't say adhan. Although it's wajib.
Yes.
Salatul Ayat is wajib. When there's an earthquake, when there's a special phenomenon in terms of the environments. So you have to basically perform the adhan and iqama for your daily prayers only.
Inshallah. Shaykhna, can we establish the beginning of the month of Ramadan and Shawwal by the predictions of astronomers?
Overall, our ulama mentioned that the only way you can establish the beginning of the month is through seeing by the naked eyes. You cannot rely on the astronomers and take your word from them and break your fast or start your fast. Because there's a narration which says, fast with sighting in the new moon and break the fast with sighting. صم للرؤية وافطر للرؤية. You cannot break this basis and principle by leaving this hadith, for example, and use the astronomy, because this was in the time of the Ma'asum alayhi salam, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that they used to see the crescent and then they would break or start their fast. So we stick with what the hadith mentions, and the ulama had, of course, they are the experts in this field and they know that what is allowed and what is not allowed. So we follow the ulama's words with this regard, and if something happens in the future, why not? We can somehow use it, utilize it. Maybe things will be developed in the future rather than just using a telescope and so forth.
Yes, inshallah. Shaykhna, if a woman forgets to perform the ghusl of her monthly cycle or after giving birth and remembers it after a day or two, are her fasts valid?
Yes, her fast for those days are valid. There's no issue with it.
Okay.
But the problem is with the janaba ghusl. If you forget, then you have to repeat it. That's the problem.
What about if one doesn't perform the janaba ghusl out of, maybe he's shy or embarrassment or for non-availability of hot water? Is it permissible for him to perform tayammum instead?
It depends. Some ulama would not accept it. They said this is not an excuse.
No.
You have to go and do, for example, the wudu or the ghusl. You can't leave it because of the shyness and so forth. Specifically for the ghusl, basically. Maybe for the wudu is a different issue, but sometimes you're in a guest's house, in a friend's house, and you want to wash for the ghusl of janaba in the middle of the night. So Ayatollah Shirazi and others would mention that if that causes discomfort or awkwardness in somehow or harm, then of course there's no objection to perform the tayammum. It has to be some kind of awkwardness. There's a haraj, shadid haraj. Imagine somebody is in someone's house and he wants to wash in the middle of the night, and he's got, the house owner he's with his, let's say, wife and daughters. So it causes a bit of discomfort. If that is actually the stage reaching, then of course the one can actually switch to tayammum.
Inshallah. Shaykhna, questions from some of our viewers. What are exactly the days of Shab Qadr in Shia Islam? The nights of Qadr.
The main nights of Qadr are the 19th of the month Ramadan, 19th, and 21st, night of 21st, and night of 23rd of the month of Ramadan.
So these are the eve of the 19th, the eve of the 21st.
Exactly. We have narrations with those regards from Ahlulbayt that the first night is this, and the second is this, and the third. And it seems to be that the concentration is on the third night, the eve of the 23rd. The concentration, Qadr al-Kubra, the grand Qadr night. But the non-Shia, Ahlul Sunnah, they have it on the 27th, the eve of 27th.
Fair enough.
But for us, the strongest ones are those three nights.
Yes. Shaykhna, and a question from one of the viewers as well. Is pre-ejaculation a tahir, and does it invalidate your fast?
What breaks the fast or makes you wajib to do the ghusl janaba for prayers is when the ejaculation was performed. And actually,
when the semen comes out.
Exactly. Then you have to go to do the ghusl and wash and so forth. And if it was a deliberate, then of course you have to make up that day as well.
Shaykhna, can we pray in a cloth which has indoor pet cat fur? Okay, cat fur, cat hair. When praying, can we pray?
In overall, our ulama say you cannot pray with a garment where there's the hair of the cats on it.
Yes.
Now some might say if it's just one or two hair, that's fine. But the others would say no. In overall, if there is even a single hairline, would not accept the fast.
Okay. Shaykhna, what is the ruling for swearing an oath using the name other than that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such as using the name of the imam or a scholar or respected religious personality?
You see, the oath or the swear should be made only by Allah Azza wa Jal and His names. That is the Shari'i oath. Otherwise, no.
Shaykhna, is it permissible to bury a Muslim in the graveyard of the non-Muslims, or to bury a non-Muslim in the graveyard of the Muslims?
Neither way is permissible, no. None of them.
No. Is it permissible to perform salah in a Christian church or Jewish synagogues?
Yes, it is permissible if the one can get the consent from the owners of the church or the synagogue. That are we allowed to pray on those places? But the ulama mentioned that if there is some kind of promotion for those places, then of course you have to avoid. But if it's just a salah and you just leave, there should be no issue with it.
Shaykhna, is it possible to perform the salah in a place not known to be tahir?
Well, in principle, it is deemed to be tahir and pure, because we have the spaces. This principle that كل شيء لك طاهر حتى تعلم أنه نجس بعينه. Everything is tahir, everywhere. You can pray anywhere, unless you're certain that this place, this part of the land, is najis and impure. Some ulama would also mention that even the floor of the bathroom, the public bathroom, is tahir, unless you see the najasa.
Exactly.
So that's what is tahir. So unless you are sure that you've seen or you've been told that this spot there was a najasa on it, blood or urine, then of course you have to avoid it.
Shaykhna, a question in from one of our viewers, and that is, are we allowed to invest into cryptocurrencies? Now recently cryptocurrencies are very, very popular, the likes of Bitcoin, and there's XRP and Dogecoin and stuff like that. And these are basically like currencies that are created through algorithms and mining online and so forth. They have a value. They have a value in US dollars and in pounds. The value goes up and down and so forth. So a lot of people would, want to invest, assuming that the value will go up later on, and then they can convert the investment. Is something like this acceptable and halal in Islam?
If they're like the stock exchange markets, and there's no haram involved, like selling alcohol and so forth, then there's no issue with it.
I see. Fantastic. Shaykhna, thank you so much for all your efforts and for all your hard work. And thank you to all the viewers for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. If we didn't answer your questions, we do apologize, and we will be answering them in the next coming days, inshallah, once we get feedback from our offices. If you do have a question that you'd like to ask, please send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address, or give us a call tomorrow 0203 5150 Myself and the Sheikh will be back tomorrow 6 p.m. here on Imam Hussein TV 3. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.